Sometimes the biggest threats don't break in. They're invited in, disguised as convenience. What if a simple object in your room, like a light bulb, was quietly watching, listening, and opening invisible doors? In this video, we unravel the true story of how a smart light meant to save energy ended up exposing government secrets. It's a cautionary tale about trust, technology, and the quiet power of small things. Before we begin, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the quiet truths and untold digital warnings shaping our world. Let's step into the glow behind the breach. The innocent installation. It started with what seemed like a harmless upgrade, a smart lighting system installed in an office building that housed a branch of a government agency. The goal was to improve energy efficiency and reduce maintenance costs. The new system could be controlled remotely through Wi-Fi and integrated seamlessly with other smart devices across the building. No one considered it a security risk. After all, it was just lighting. But the danger wasn't in the light it gave. It was in the code it carried. These smart bulbs came with their own tiny operating systems, wireless communication protocols, and network permissions. By connecting to the building's central Wi-Fi, they created an unexpected backdoor. The very convenience that made them appealing also made them a vulnerability, and no one saw it coming. The hidden firmware flaw. Deep within the light bulb's firmware was an unpatched vulnerability, a tiny coding flaw that had gone unnoticed by both the manufacturer and its teams. This vulnerability allowed attackers to gain limited access to the network through the smart bulb's firmware update feature, which wasn't encrypted or verified. Cybercriminals discovered this flaw and reverse-engineered the device, allowing them to install malicious code remotely. Once the bulb received the infected update, it became a node of entry. No one paid attention to it because it didn't crash or flicker. It just quietly opened the door to something far more dangerous. Infiltration through the network. Once inside, the attackers didn't make noise. They began mapping the internal network, learning its structure, locating sensitive servers, and identifying user accounts with administrative privileges. The attackers used the smart bulb's access point to tunnel deeper, moving laterally across the system. The breach wasn't immediate. It was slow, methodical, and patient. Weeks of data gathering, learning patterns, and planting small bits of code to expand control. The hackers used encrypted traffic and disguised their movements as normal device activity. This stealth made it nearly impossible to detect. Bypassing traditional security. One of the most shocking aspects of the breach was how easily it bypassed traditional security tools. Firewalls, antivirus software, and even AI-powered threat detection systems were focused on computers, mobile devices, and suspicious emails, not light bulbs. Because the threat came through a smart device with minimal processing power and obscure communication protocols, it slid under the radar. No one expected an IoT, Internet of Things, device to be the source of such a breach. The attackers knew this and exploited it with precision. The data extraction phase. After gaining deep access, the attackers began quietly exfiltrating data. But they didn't take large chunks at once. Instead, they scheduled transmissions during off hours and hid the stolen data inside normal-looking traffic patterns, disguising it as updates, DNS queries, or even smart system pings. Over time, they extracted sensitive files, some of which included personnel movement schedules, internal communications, and project blueprints. One of the leaked documents eventually made its way into foreign hands, revealing a strategic defense program previously unknown to the public. The insider trigger. Ironically, the attackers weren't the only ones responsible for the breach. An employee had unknowingly helped them. Frustrated by glitches in the smart lighting system, they downloaded third-party firmware updates from an online forum. One of those updates had been seeded with malicious code. By installing it manually without alerting the department, they bypassed normal update channels and unknowingly opened a broader path for the attackers. This human error, combined with the original vulnerability, turned the smart bulb from a weak point into a fully functional attack base. The discovery by accident. The breach was discovered not by the security team, but by a contractor doing routine maintenance on unrelated systems. While inspecting server response times, they noticed unusual traffic coming from the building's automation controller, specifically during hours when no updates were scheduled. Digging deeper, the contractor traced the traffic to the smart lighting network, which had never been considered part of the critical infrastructure. This finding led to a forensic investigation that eventually uncovered the extent of the infiltration and the shocking realization that the origin was a light bulb. A national security fallout. Once the breach was confirmed and traced back to something as ordinary as a smart light bulb, the magnitude of the situation escalated rapidly. What had initially seemed like a minor internal network issue quickly transformed into a national security emergency. Top intelligence agencies, cybersecurity teams, and government officials were pulled into high-level meetings. Sensitive files had already been exfiltrated. Documents containing troop movement schedules, facility blueprints, and confidential communications. The potential damage was immeasurable. There was a real fear that adversarial governments or rogue actors now had insight into defense strategies or vulnerabilities. And worst of all, no one could say for certain if other buildings, departments, or even foreign embassies had unknowingly installed similar, compromised smart systems. The light bulb had done more than leak data. It had exposed how deeply flawed the nation's trust in unvetted technology had become. Rewriting the rulebook. The breach forced security experts to face a sobering reality. The existing rules were no longer enough. For years, cybersecurity protocols focused on servers, firewalls, and user access. But this incident proved that the real threat could come from something as mundane as a light fixture. In response, agencies and companies had no choice but to completely rethink how they approached smart devices. Every piece of connected hardware, from light bulbs to vending machines, was now seen as part of the threat landscape. Procurement policies were rewritten to require full transparency into a device's firmware, manufacturer supply chain, and update mechanisms. Devices once considered low risk were now subject to rigorous testing before being allowed inside sensitive buildings. A lesson in digital humility. The smart light bulb breach didn't just expose sensitive data, it exposed our overconfidence. It reminded us that in a world increasingly driven by convenience and automation, even the most unassuming objects can become weapons in the wrong hands. We often think of cyber threats as something distant, sophisticated malware, faceless hackers, complex code. But the true danger lies in the things we overlook. The everyday devices we trust without question. The tools we install to make life easier. That light bulb, designed to illuminate rooms, ended up shining a harsh light on a blind spot in modern security thinking. It challenged the notion that intelligence is always complex, showing that simplicity can be just as dangerous when paired with negligence. And that's how a device designed to illuminate ended up casting shadows no one expected. In a world racing towards smart everything, we must slow down and ask, what are we connecting to, and what might we be letting in? If this story made you think twice about the objects in your space, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell for more stories where the smallest things carry the biggest consequences. See you in the next one.